My name is Jeffrey Falick, with a long A. I always emphasize that. And I am the rabbi at the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism of Metro Detroit. Probably my earliest, best memories are of my grandfather's seders. He would always make a very big deal about it, scare us to death when we thought the ghost of Eliyahu Hanavi was coming in. But it was those were great family memories. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and at the end of my sophomore year in high school, due to family circumstances, we moved to the Bible Belt, specifically Houston, Texas. And because I was from a very Jewish neighborhood, I wanted to keep a connection to it, which is kind of unusual for a teenager, and started going to a temple called Emmanuel in Houston, Texas. Met a rabbi there who was connected to our youth group named Robert Lowy, Bob Lowy, who was just featured in the foreword as one of the great proponents of pro-choice activism. That was after I knew him, but he was inspiring, and he made me think maybe I want to do this for a living too. Probably, probably the community, the sense of community. I view being a rabbi very much as being a community organizer. And so bringing people together, particularly, well, certainly when they have personal needs, there's no question that that's important, but also when we have communal and larger issues that we need to address. As a humanistic rabbi, we can tend to be very involved in the, I guess you'd call them political, but we call them the moral and ethical issues of the day. And that's, those two things are my favorite. My favorite Shabbat tradition is actually not connected to my professional work, though I do love Shabbat at our congregation. I happen to have two Orthodox daughters, very modern Orthodox. So we're all very close. And I would say my favorite tradition is when I'm with them, even though it is more traditional than I am by a lot, to spend Shabbat with them in the peace and quiet, surrounded by there's two of them, my two beautiful grandchildren. I love that. I think Shabbat is very much about family. And even though Humanistic Judaism does it differently, I like that tradition. So we don't pray in Humanistic Judaism because our connection is not through Jewish religion per se, but through Jewish culture. But we do have a humanistic version of the Kaddish, which is said in English and talks about ennobling all people, raising up the dignity of humankind, trying to make sense of the world, struggle with the world, even to embrace the world, even as we struggle with its parts, is one of the beautiful sentences from that. And it's been a collective effort of rabbis, some from the Reconstructionist movement, some from the Reform. I put in my 2 cents, and this is what we do in my congregation, and I look forward to that every week. I would say Passover. A lot of people say Passover. I love Passover, though I don't hold that that it marks an actual historical event. It does mark the idea of freedom, not just the wonderful rights that come with it, but also the obligations. And the fact that our most celebrated holiday is rooted in freedom should be a reminder to us of our responsibility to bring human rights throughout the world. Well, this one's probably not going to make the top 10 of a lot of people, but I like gefilte fish a lot in all of its varieties. I think it means being connected to an ancient tribe that constantly evolves and updates itself and welcomes new people in. a family of people, if you will. I believe, and many people know this about me, I believe that our gates and our doors should be as wide open as possible. And that's also a principle of our movement. But we do have this connection to over 3,000 years of history. It's not exactly what's written in the Torah, but the Torah does reflect a great deal of the early struggles and the early evolution of our tradition. So that's, to me, that's what it means to be a member of the Jewish people. It's to be part of this large tribal family where we certainly don't agree on many things, but that we still hold special and in our hearts this calendar, this set of some people call them values, other people call them principles, and that we continue to debate about them and treat each other as if we're family, for better and worse. Well, the rabbinate has changed a lot since I started, and you know, that's a story I've been hearing since I started. So it's an ever-changing profession, if I go by what I knew. So I think that a person needs to be, first of all, grounded in why they love and care about the Jewish people and Jewish traditions, and secondly, have a good understanding of their own desire to spread that to people. I didn't have such a good grounding in that because of a variety of personal things. I still managed to find it, but I was a lot happier when I did. And I think that if, you know, a person who is a committed Reform Jew, a committed conservative or Orthodox or whatever it is, to have a good grounding in what their approach is, why they love it, and then to find a sort of a personal professional track. There's so many ways to do this that are not congregational. And I was not a congregational rabbi until 9 years ago. So we do need rabbis, where there's apparently now a shortage. So people, you know, if they're interested in Tikkun Olam, if they're interested in tradition, if they're interested in spreading the word of Shabbat, whatever it is, to set for themselves that mission. I'm fairly much of an open book. I think, I mean, even the things that people would be surprised about, I probably give it a talk about at some point. My love of comic books, my unbelievable adherence to my second religion, which is Star Trek, and all things of that world, because also it does fit in with my humanism. I think that those are the things that people, if they didn't know, might not realize that I'm kind of a nerd that way. But there's not a lot. There's not a lot. Becoming a humanist was also it was a public and a personal journey. And so many things about me I put out there on the table. I would say that if I did have one goal for the Jewish world, it would be to learn from our historical experience the right and correct lessons, which are not just the necessity of preserving the Jewish people. We're good at that, and we'll hopefully continue to find ways to be even better at that. Welcoming new people in is a big part of it, but also of remembering that our human rights were not so respected for the majority of our history, and that the lesson of that is not to circle the wagons, as they might say, but to really open the doors wider so that all peoples understand that what the Jews went through, they desire never to go through again themselves, but also to make sure that no one else does.